Hey everyone, this is Zealous of the Raven's Voice and ACL here, taking every chance possible to remind you of War for November. This is an Armored Core Verdict Day World Mode event for PlayStation 3 players, going strong all month. Here's how the event works. Register your team at armoredcorelegacy.com. During the month of November, if you battle alongside one of our mercs and win, you gain a point. Battle against one of our mercs and win, and your registered team can gain a point that way as well. At the end of the month, the team with the most points has a choice of prizes ranging from PSN store cards to AC model kits. Again, check out armoredcorelegacy.com for all the details. Hoping to see many of you on the battlefield. Everybody, welcome to the November 14th edition of Raven's Voice. This is Zealous here, along with, as always, Tierson.
Hi, everybody.
I was like super friendly.
I'm a super friendly guy. Haven't you noticed that on the forums of the place?
With every post.
Make
Man,
them all smile.
hope everybody's doing great. We've got a super fun thread to discuss here, if you can call it a thread. It's a topic that's been simmering for a while now that we really look forward to discussing. That's the legendary weapon in the Armored Core series, the Karasawa, and its legacy, and the different incarnations it's had, all the different changes. So much to get into with that. So much to get into.
Yeah,
Um,
we've had this one on the back burner for a while and talking about different topics to do and such.
mhm.
This one came up and it was one we were both excited about. I mean, honestly, you can't do Armored Core justice, and we can't call ourselves truly a podcast for this community without talking about this, without having this show at some point.
Definitely, couldn't agree more. I mean, we've we've already had a number of people, weigh in about it to kind of just toss the ball around about some interesting aspects to discuss.
A little,
I'll say a little
little
bit,
bit of drama.
little bit, little bit on the edge. We keeping it cool, keeping it cool. Nothing's over the frying pan yet, so we're good. All the ingredients are still there. We got our canola oil set, so
That's what the hell.
and nothing's on fire. But
But yeah, well, no, thank you for saying that because I said but too. But yeah, we have plugs to do.
oh yeah,
Now, as you saw coming into the show, the ad for War for November. We're about halfway through the month.
hmm
War for November going strong. You, sir, have not been keeping up with your merking duties, and by that I mean you have not merked yet, because as you've said, your PS3 has been broke. But you will see Zealous soon because he's up and running again.
yep, I am
I
back
gotta,
on
gotta
track.
tell you, gotta tell, gotta tell you, I'm having fun with the War for November. Basically, being able to see a lot of the teams. I guess maybe you'd consider calling it a perk. Oh boy, no, I'm poking fun at people, but but no, it's been fun for the fact that just seeing the variety. I think War for November, if the goal ultimately was to keep people active in world mode
Yeah.
and have a wide variety of teams joining it, I would definitely say it's a success in that area. So while there's definitely been a little bit of controversy I will say created controversy over a couple things. Overall, I'm enjoying this event, and it looks like
hmm
a lot of the community is enjoying it as well. We're about halfway through, but you can still enter. And if you and your team spend a few days living and breathing Armored Core, you can get caught up, and you can still be contenders for this. There's nothing that hasn't been done at this halfway point that can't be done in the equal amount of time in that second half of the uh, of
hmm
of the event. So, yeah, if you haven't yet, get your team registered over at, and now segue into my second plug here,
hmm
ArmoredCoreLegacy.com, the most active forums for Armored Core. Get yourself registered over there. Let's see, what else? The design contest is over. A couple
Yes.
days now. I just looked over there. I didn't see anything as far as official results yet. I will check again probably during the break.
hmm
So nothing really to announce there. But yeah, we plugged that one for, I think this is the fourth week now that we're talking about it.
Hmm.
Varied interest in that. Definitely a lot of people who were really excited about it. But yeah, so design contest is over, and so we have War for November going on, and as well, I had officially announced it about a week ago,
Hmm.
and I'm gonna plug it once again. There is an Armored Core tournament on the horizons for December 7th. That is Act for Charity. It's the first Armored Core Verdict Day tournament out there for the international community. Yeah, still need some signups for that. Still need a lot of people. And that is only about 3 weeks away. So again, go to armorcorelegacy.com, find the forums for that, sign up, and you do have to pay $10 to get in for this event, but 100% of that is going to charity.
Right on. And again, if you were looking for any other details, it's right over at ACL in the appropriate thread. I'll be sure to place a link for that in the description for those of you that want to check it out. This is slick in a lot of ways. We've never had a chance in this community to leverage Armored Core and its players with a link to a charity. Again, you've seen this on Twitch TV. Some of the people like who used to stream Diablo 3 a lot, like Athene and some of the other channels, they usually have a charity hooked in. But we haven't done anything like it for AC. So it's a unique event. I think it's a new thing for us, and it would be sweet if we could get a great turnout for that. So if you want to come throw down for Verdict Day, wherever you're at with the game, come on and sign up for it. I think it'll be a blast. So,
Hey, Zealous, where can they email us if they want to send us an email?
and if you want to send us an email, drop us a line at ravensvoiceacl@gmail.com.
All right, there we go. I think that's all the plugs. Okay, so before we get into the main topic, I just want to chat a little bit.
Yeah.
We were talking about before the show, you've got a PS3 going again.
Yes. Yes.
Uh, Looking forward to being a Merc.
Definitely. It's kind of unfortunate. It's not a backwards compatible right now. I got a slim. And I'm still going to be going through the process of getting some of my other saves back. But yeah, it'll be great to actually obviously jump right back into things with Verdict Day and go ahead and merc for that and to try to catch whatever times I can beyond. So looking forward to seeing some of you.
Probably one of my favorite things about this is, and I remember Merking not for War from November, previous to the event, doing some Merking and it being very sporadic in world mode. Whereas
Hmm.
now, at least for myself, I'm finding people all the time, and it's
Awesome.
really, it's been a good opportunity for getting to know a lot of the teams that want to be or are hopeful or actually are contenders for the world mode for the international region. So again, I think if the success for this event is weighed on how busy it has been, I definitely think it's been a success in that regard. So I remember before this started, Chang, who put this event together, was very I don't want to say nervous, but apprehensive as to how
Hmm.
well it would do, and
Hmm.
I think it's done very well.
Yeah, for sure. Again, the special approach about this event was to utilize the world mode. Again, most of the time with an event you have an armored core, it has to do with either team battles or a battle royale or 1v1 or something along those lines. It's just straight versus, not using a unique feature that we have in game, or a mode specifically. But I think this was a little too good to pass up, and I'm glad Cheng decided to seize on it. We haven't had something like world mode really in AC before. You could count some of the things in
Well, we did,
Vanilla 5,
yeah.
sure, with Conquest and whatnot. But this new iteration, this new transform version of it, it's something. It's a cool concept to use, and it's kind of like a season. Almost feels like you're doing NFL or
Yeah,
something
no,
like
it's yeah, and yeah, we did have conquest in five, but that was a giant pile of crap. So
that.
you couldn't do something like that there. I mean, and I think maybe that can be seen as a testament to the drastic improvements that were made from 5VD, whereas something like
Yeah.
this could easily be seen as something that could be pulled off with the new world mode versus
Hmm.
conquest. There was no doubt you could not do this. I mean, you couldn't have you can have much fun with conquest as it was. Just as this, just with the way it was in the game, let alone try to design an event around it.
For sure. But hey, at least you put away your bait and tackle. You don't have to worry about armored fishing any longer. That's pretty much over. So.
So now that you're coming back to the game, what are you looking forward to doing with Verdict Day now that you're coming back?
As far as getting back into things, the first is to really just optimize where I left off on a number of my designs. I had some really fun concepts in the works before things cracked on me, and now obviously with the patch and the things that have changed with that, and the new releases that we've had. There's a few things to consider. I wasn't a hardcore Vendetta user or something like that. I actually didn't have any quads I run in the street, with Vendetta. I thought it was a really fun weapon. But just looking into hand combos very closely, looking into getting my momentum, mobility, and stab where I want it. Just doing some very close, careful tweaks, and just applying just all the stuff I've been trying to keep up on in game. I think this goes for anything with AC. We've had other people in the past, whether you've lost your memory cards or whatever else it is. The forums have always been a really nice retreat for staying engaged with things, whether that's a subtle change within game, or there's a new announcement, or there's a new trend happening. They're good things to follow. And I think when you they help you re-enter when you're coming back into something you don't feel like as behind. And so I want to say thanks. Everyone's posted great stuff, not just in ACL. We've had good discussions over on Reaching Perfection, various other spots, just everything from mechanics to different combos that have been used, and just what's happening with the scene, as well as in Skype chat too. So there's been talk everywhere, and much appreciated.
Well, and you got to remember when Zeus is talking about builds, because he may not mention it. He's always talking quads, always quads,
Always, always,
and
always, always.
with that. No, I have to say, man. I mean, being out there as much as I have been the last few days,
Yeah,
there is much needed love for the quads. I'm not seeing a lot of them. In fact, I can't even think of any specifically that I've seen here. Maybe I don't. I almost want to say that I've seen some, almost because I want to make sure, because I think it would be so wrong for me to say that I've seen none. But I really can't think of any. So you got to get out there and represent, man. Quads are looking weak.
dying breed, huh? We'll have to turn some of that around. I need to get my UNAC quad squad going too. Kind of
You
little
know.
little dream I had, but
I'm gonna play with Unax at some point. I don't
yeah.
know. It's interesting.
Mm.
Yeah, probably not though. Honestly, I probably won't. Because probably the last things I'll look at for Verdict Day will be Unax and in hard mode. And out of the two, I'm sure I'll look at hard mode first.
Right, right, right. And that's another one too. Again, we mentioned this super briefly last week, but we haven't really heard anyone talk a whole lot about their experiences with hardcore, or messing around with that aspect of single player. How far some of you made it. If anyone has really pressed that content, if you've either completed all the modes or made it, really far into hardcore, post up, send an email, drop a line, let us know. So I get the vibe. Not many people have messed with it yet. So
Okay,
not sure.
so let's get into the topic. I mean, like we said, this is one that we've had on the
Oh yeah.
burner for the Karasawa.
Again, as we mentioned earlier, a legendary weapon in the Armored Core series. For those of you who may not have kept up with the history of the weapon or mythology of it, if you want to call it like that, it was named after one of the producers, I guess, or one of the massive contributors to the AC series that worked with From. It was named after him, the weapon itself,
Named
and
after him, which he probably did himself.
probably um, that's one of those points I didn't research super deep about it, but I'd like an article about that sometime. But yeah, the Karasawa, was almost kind of like a sword in the stone story when it was first found in AC1. You got it during if I remember correct, it was like a fuel depot. You were destroying like some fuel generators, and you could get it before or after, but it was by its lonesome. Just after you did so, it was there for the taking. No massive MT, no huge AC battle. It was just there for you to draw out
You
and
could,
make use of.
in researching this, you could actually do you could do that mission, is the word I'm looking for, without even finish. You could go and get it either during the mission or after you finished. But yeah, Kurosawa has had a lot of, for the most part, it has tried to stay in some kind of uniform
Hmm.
uh, fashion. It's a laser rifle. Most versions are similar to others, but there are a couple crazy ones out there. It did actually spawn a Kurosawa light kind of version,
Hmm.
the Mini Sawa, which has had a couple incarnations, and we'll talk about that.
Hmm.
But yeah, it's been in every game. Yes, even Armored Core 4. If you're not aware of that, think you know that it wasn't an Armored Core 4. It actually was. It was just a ridiculous manner to get the Kurosawa, which just kind of shows to show you more problems with Armored Core 4. No, I will not cut it any slack, guys. Never.
So
Um, So okay, so let's
Yeah.
get back to Armored Core 1. Yeah. So
Yeah. Yeah.
like most great weapons, not all great, not all of them, but most great weapons in the original Armored Core. You found this, you obtained it in a mission. You actually went over and picked it up,
Hmm.
which doesn't happen a lot in the games. But yeah, so and if I remember correctly, if you shot one of those fuel tankers, you could end up getting yourself killed. Uh,
Yeah, you really, really had to watch those. Explosives, especially explosive objects, were so insanely volatile back in the early ACs. It wasn't just something you could just a cute explosion you could swat off. It was going to hurt you pretty bad.
and so we're going back to 1997.
Hmm.
Yeah, 1997 was at this point. So I want to put this in a little bit of a frame for you. I mean, a lot of houses didn't even have computers yet. The internet was in its infancy. Grunge music was still very popular, along with wearing ripped jeans and flannels, even in the summer. So now, and these are my teenage years. This is when I grew up. I graduated from high school in '96, I think it was. Um, completely different era. So the question becomes, how did because nowadays, if you want to know where a part is, it's not even a second thought. You go online
Yep.
and you find it. So back then, how do you find such a weapon?
Mm.
Uh, Magazines, gaming magazines. And even though the internet was around, who knows if you even actually went on there to find that kind of stuff. Now, and I bring this up because I have a story for my introduction for the
Yeah.
Karas, which happened in Armored Core. Now, my friends and I, we ate up Armored Core. In its height, before Project Phantasma came out, there was about a dozen of us that were playing this game. Like there was a lot of us. I actually contribute a lot of my passion for putting on events like I did to the fact of being able to see early on how fun it was to have so many people to play this game with.
Mm.
So we're talking maybe 2 or 3 days after we had bought an Armored Core, at which four of us had bought it. I was actually the first to get it, and immediately that same day after playing it for a little while, my brother and two of our friends went out and got it as well. So we're all
Right on.
playing, and so within 2 or 3 days, I remember one morning. You see, the my place is the place that everybody hung out and often crashed, stayed over and such. And we had a few different PlayStation 1 setups. So I remember getting up one morning and a friend of mine, very, very anxious to uh, to play Armored Core. He's like, "Oh man, come on, let's go play." And I think I had trashed him the night previous, but he's like, "Oh, we got to play. You got to check this out." Okay, so we go and do some verses. We link up two of the PS1s, and we do some verses, and it takes no more than 10 seconds for him to obliterate me. It just is these laser shots just coming at me. I mean, and I'm like, what are you doing? Because he's not playing a tank, because you had the tank with the gun arms, and those were obvious. The laser,
Hmm.
the laser rifle arms. Which before this point, my brother was destroying all of us with a tank. He had a tank build, and yeah, he was kicking all of our asses. So we get into the match, and it takes only a matter of seconds for him to just completely destroy me with some kind of laser gun. And I'm like, what is going on? And he's just laughing. He's just having a blast with it. And he's like, oh, I found this weapon last night, and none of us had found any hidden parts at this.
Wow.
So, so I'm like, what do you mean you found this gun? What are you talking about? And he wouldn't. That was the thing. They drove me nuts with it because they all knew where it was, but they didn't tell me until like later on that day. They drove me nuts with it. I'm like, come on, guys, where is it? What's it called? And but no, they had too much fun destroying me with it. So come to find it was a Karasawa, and this is how we started realizing, a lot of things about the game at this point.
Hmm.
Like finding parts in missions. And so it was just a couple days later that we found out about Humans Plus. You have to remember this information not readily available at your nearest computer.
Hmm.
And when we had gotten the game, which was right when it came out, magazines didn't have a lot of information. At least none of the ones we saw. We didn't know where to find this stuff. We did find something shortly after telling us where all the parts were. I think within a month or so.
Hmm.
But most of that we found out by ourselves. So yeah, that was my introduction to this weapon, and to go into that specifically, the Armored Core One version of the Karasawa was one of the deadliest versions,
Yes.
and it was a standard bearer as far as power and survivability in the game. Because I mean, if you were really good with something, you could get by without it. But generally speaking, it was the
Hmm.
Karasawa to either kill the other guy or to at least kill him and survive long enough in a match or do well enough in a match to
Yeah.
take him out.
Yeah, and this is where the landmark started. We had our initial name, the WG1 Karasawa, and I always laugh when I look back at the old description to it. It was just so simple and just upfront. Energy weapon, powerful but heavy, and it couldn't have gotten more simple than that and more true than that too. This is where we started, obviously, to see the aesthetic of the Carousel, and not just from description, but how it applied to the actual look in game. The usual design for it, it has like a counterweight to it. Those of you that have watched Evangelion, there was another very similar weapon to it in that too. But this whole counterweight design, mech fans, it's so easy to point back to this weapon that really, really made this legendary. I want to say, if you think Ava or something else did it, okay, throw that out there. You can say it, but as far as I'm concerned, it's the Carousel. The other amazing part about this one, just stat-wise, when this hit an AC1, you just looked at its strength. I mean, yes, it was a heavier weapon. In fact, it was 1,000 weight on the head. 1550 attack power, packed a big kick. But here's the two stats that I laughed about most in this, and I keep thinking about what this would mean by today's standards. Okay, range, was obviously a different story back in AC1 and reload time compared to what it is now. But when you hear these numbers, range 10,000 and reload time of 8, with that much power in 50 rounds, terrifying. It had a very trademark, I think Cheng said it in the thread for this week, a "you are deleted" sound for the laser as it fired. And
Yeah,
it got on you, and you knew it. You just started to see your AP just shave and shave and shave, and it just
yeah, it was awesome.
it was terrible to get hit
It
by
was
this
such a
thing.
trashy 8-bit kind of sound. It didn't need to be anything else but that.
It didn't, and you look at the round itself. And we're not talking about a thermonuclear explosion or something that would drape the entire screen in blue plasma. No, this was a very straight laser, essentially, that would come at you at rocketing speeds and just totally rock your face and rock your world. But the fun part is the weapon itself was referred to as a plasma rifle, not a laser rifle up front, which was neat. Later on it would develop into its standard known as a laser rifle. So but in AC1, it's still set in that certain spot. And it wasn't too terrible in your drain, 422. Now you hear all this about this weapon, you're saying, okay, what could be the kickback to it? There had to be something. What was really interesting, this was in Armored Core 1 through MOA, this was the only time in the series that the Karasawa was unequipable by tanks or by quads. They could not make use of it. If you tried to use this part, you would get a message, equip not possible, or equip impossible.
And I think part of that is because like I was saying, my brother who was always used a tank, obviously had a huge advantage in using those weapons,
Hmm.
gun arms and such, and the back weapons, which unless you were Humus Plus, you had to kneel down to use. I think the Karasawa was a way of giving you a bit more of a level playing field.
Mm, definitely. And you look at where weapon class is set at this point. AC is it's just in its infancy, establishing what where leg types sit. What type of weaponry is usable, and quads and tanks had their early cannon advantages. We've seen these echo throughout the AC series, and they had a real static point with that. You equipped a GNL on a quad, for example, or on a tank, you were going to have naturally better mobility with it than you could with the biped or something else. So it's interesting when you think about it in that light. It was almost like a weapon that could counterbalance that point of other classes having mobility with cannons. And I think it more than made up for that, though, with just the sheer strength of the weapon. So,
There are a handful of things that throughout Armored Core are staples. Nine
mhm.
balls we talked about in the last couple shows is one of them. customization, better than any other game out there is another. And I think the Karasawa, starting with this version, with the first Armored Core, I think, well, again, probably not as popular as some of the more mainstream games. You know, you will find people who may not remember a lot, but they will remember, probably if any other parts, they will remember the Karasawa, and if not
Yep.
the Karasawa, the Moonlight. But
Hmm.
Karasawa definitely something there that even the most of casual or longtime fans from long ago will remember. So part of the reason
Hmm.
why it deserves its own highlight.
It does. You know, and one thing I wanted to see more of, I didn't really start paying attention to some of the main designs, I guess, used in competitions till MOA, and I kind of couldn't avoid it. You know, I think it was tips and tricks. You know, we were just talking about magazines a bit ago. I used to read tips and tricks a lot. That's where they give you a heads up on not just cheat codes and stuff for games, but you'd have small walkthroughs and strategy guides. And there was actually a section in tips and tricks for a while back in the late 90s that would actually showcase various designs that were used, occasionally from someone like the winning designs from like Japanese events.
Mm,
On the rare occasion, I used to love that. I saw some of these for AC2, some were obviously for the older titles too, with 1 through MOA, and I just can't remember how much you saw this weapon used in a tournament setting, or what was the ban history on it. I'm cloudy on that. I'm not too certain. I know, again, op-eye with such as like GNLs or laser cannons are also very powerful. There were so many options in
yeah,
AC1, but
but I do believe the optional part that was specific to increasing energy was better than the op-eye version.
mm, mm. So it's just
Um,
neat comparisons. But
So a couple things to note. I do believe that this is the only part of the Generation One where if you got Project Phantasma and you did not have the original Armored Core, you do not get a Karasawa. That was not possible, and I think that's the only time that they've done that. Because even in Master Arena, they had just simply put it in the shop for you to buy. But yeah, so no AC1, no vanilla going in Project Phantasma, no Karasawa for you.
and see, and that's a point that highlights for me. That was one I always thought you could buy it in Project Phantasma and pick it up, even if you didn't have an import.
No, I thought I'd remembered that, and actually I double checked that. See, I actually do a little
Okay,
research here,
okay,
a little bit, not too much. I'm not going to go taint my
right.
reputation. I research things.
Slick. Slick. So we're talking about a little bit about Project Phantasm and MOA here, and just kind of how the weapon changed. There really wasn't much of a move as far as from AC1 to Project Phantasm with this weapon, but we did see a very slight change that happened in Master of the Arena, and that was the weight. That the Karasawa actually gained more weight as of MOA, and it wasn't a huge amount. It was 120 on the head. They did make it a little heavier, so again, it pushed the description of the weapon a little more. But that's an interesting sign. Obviously from we're paying attention to how this weapon was being used, just the impact it had in the field, and perhaps felt if we make it pack on another 120, here we have MOA, we got new parts, new options. Let's make this a really specific choice, a little more niche if people wanted to get into it. So, but that was really the only change that at least I have noted for it during one all the way up to MOA for it.
Yeah, let's see. So heaviest arm weapon in
Hmm.
the game for Generation One. I do believe it was the Drainiest as well.
Now, that 422, I don't think it changed a whole lot. And I am just sitting here as I am. I'm not versed in all the laser rifles from MOA and one in Project Phantasma, but the Karasawa, and it's had this tendency. It always carves out its spot. It's saying, okay, here it is. You're going to pay this amount of weight for it, and you will pay this drain to use it. But this will be your reward of being able to pick this thing up. So I think that would be pretty concordant with it.
So, well, I think we've covered that. So let's move on to the next generation. I know your favorite,
Oh yeah.
Generation Two, Armored Core Two, and another age, the MK2.
The Karasawa Mark II, also as I started to come to know it, and Zenos wanted to hear this one, so Ksaw Mark II, or as others would like to pronounce it, it's got all kinds of bad raps. In the circle of friends I play with, no one could say it right. Um, again, my real pickup into both the community aspect and like the real hardcore playing aspect of AC was with AC2. And this is where I really, really got my jump in the game. Beforehand, I had
backseat played a bit. I had seen a buddy find the original Karasawa, but I hadn't necessarily plugged the legend of the weapon and exactly how powerful it was and what I meant. So this was my first time, I think, really, really getting hands-on with it as a player. And someone kept telling me about it. This is actually my story about it, where I heard about it. Someone kept yelling at me about this laser rifle. And he said, "Hey, yeah, did you get the Karasawa yet? You really need to get the Karasawa, because the Karasawa is amazing." And it made no sense to me. I said, "Okay, why would an AC use an industrial saw that's meant for cars as like a weapon?" Like it, it made no sense. But then I found he just couldn't pronounce it right, and I ended up picking up the part.
Neither can you.
Mr. K Sawyer.
Asaw.
But yeah, that was one of my first jumps into it, and I had another friend who was so frustrated with it, he kept saying it backwards and just mixing up the name. He called it the Rakaw, and it made him rage quit every time someone would use the weapon. Um, there's also a reason that I've had this weapon in my avatar for years. My avatar I've used in forums has pretty much been the same avatar that I started the AC community with, and there's a lot of history, a lot of memories here. Bear in mind, this is where I had no concept of there's a ban list out there, or this. There could be certain things that are just way overpowered or stronger than no. I mean, we're all having fun, and I had a smaller group than the people Tierson played with, but we still had a blast, just kind of dedicating ourselves to kind of small and split screen play. So much split screen play, and land when we could once we found out about that. But what separated this version of the Karasawa, I think, was both its firing pattern and the way it hit you. Now, if we're saying the Karasawa from AC1 was a nightmare, this was one you almost just didn't wake up from. What made this Karasawa so scary was it now had an explosion radius. It was no longer just a simple, the straight laser line that you just see shave your AP at incredible rates. It had impact. It had solid SFX behind it. It sounded just like a laser cannon when it was released from the barrel, and when it impacted, it was like a grenade explosion. And even more so, it would deal damage to you in two tiers. You would have the initial impact, and there would be a small explosion off the surface, and that would hit you too. So,
I'm looking at that too, and yeah, to say that in addition, you technically take two hits, an
yep,
additional 120 damage was caused from the explosion.
yep. And there's almost no way to describe how ruthless this weapon could be when you got on someone with it. And bear in mind, this could still take optional part tunes too. You could get higher rate, more damage, as well as less energy consumed. And this thing would start going off on someone, and if you just kept a good bead, it was merciless. Some of you might remember, I think, two of the iconic AIs from AC2, Matthias and our 9-breaker, the rank 1 Ares, made specific use of this weapon. Both ACs used Op-I / plus at the time intensely. I think this weapon especially was shined to Matthias because he had a very strong rotation of weapons as is. The GNL, the Plasma Cannon, the Moonlight, and the Karasawa on a heavyweight quad with plus. A lot of people freaked out about that one the first time they saw it. But
I think you've said it, and I know I've seen other people say it too.
mm-hmm.
I think I have to agree. And I'm really looking at this topic here today. I actually was coming in a little bit critical of the fact that a lot of people think that this is the most powerful version.
Mm-hmm.
But I actually think at the end of the day, I do have to agree. I do think that this is the most powerful and obviously overpowered version of the Karasawa in the entire series to date.
What made this kind of fascinating was they took a play on Master of the Arena on this one. You look at the weight; it's still 1120. So it's almost like you had your Forge Smiths come and refold this thing into a brand new nightmare. But here we have it. The thing hit even harder. Now it's 50. It was 1580 attack. It still maintained its 50 rounds. The range was adjusted for the game itself. Obviously, some of the calculations have changed, so it was 500. But the rate to usage drain, the reload time for it, it was still incredible, even if you did not have optional parts behind it.
Well, I was just looking at this, that the reload time actually from AC2 to Another Age was even shortened. It
Yes.
was up, and not from 53 to 44. A little bit of a heat and ammo heat decrease, but yeah, so it got even better. It was an even more powerful weapon going into Another Age.
And what was neat about it too, aesthetically, it kept that the slim shape, the counterweight design and everything, but it had, I think, more of a just a slight bit of bulk, but more of a kick to it. And again, it's signature counterweight design, and it by this point it got I believe it got the laser rifle designation, but it was not called plasma anymore. But the thing, oh my gosh, it felt like plasma. It felt like a miniature plasma grenade when it would go off on you and it would hit you. But it more than pulled its weight. An incredible weapon for the amount of power, accuracy, speed, ammunition you got out of it. I would gladly pay 1120 to use a weapon like that. And again, now we had more freedom with it. Quads were able to take advantage of it. You could mount this on so many different builds. It wasn't restricted leg class wise anymore. So this is what led room for obviously a lot of different types of designs and leg classes that couldn't make use of the weapon before. Myself, I know my staple in Another Age that I really enjoyed was KARASAWA Mark II with the inside orbits you gain from defeating 9-Ball Seraph, the optional mission. Um, the the single multi warhead and the I use the 4-shot extensions with the GNL. And it's just a fun rotation, just a fun design to play. Hardcore in the overboost. Use the XA2 core. Still adore that one. I love it. Popped up again in Last Raven as the Icarus, but I didn't get into it as much. I had the Nair core by then. But just devastating. And again, bearing in mind, you could do so many more combinations with this now because of how open the weapon was to use. And they had a bit of flashback in this. This appeared again in one of the portable games. I believe it
Yeah,
was
yeah, no,
SL.
I'm sorry. Yeah,
Yeah.
Silent Line, and if you got it in Silent Line, you got the Last Raven portable, then you would have it there as well.
Yep.
And this is the first time that you would have. I mean, every game has had its incarnation of Carousel, but here now you had kind of a legendary version in your current game. So it was an actual retro piece.
Hmm.
So it wasn't just like the newer version. It was the MK2.
Sure was. And what was neat was it was still a little tweaked. Now it didn't maintain everything that it had. The ammo count was cut on it. But its traditional stats about the weight, the energy drain, the power, they remained. They did
Yeah,
remain on
I
it.
mean, it looked like the MK2 as well.
Yeah, it sure did. Sure did. Sure did. Same design. So it's neat. This was the only Karasawa that really had a repeat like that. And I mean, by that point in the series with the portable games, we had a couple of other new parts and some retro throwbacks. We also had the a remake from Mirage of the Zeo Matrix legs that Prisoner B50, whatever you call them, from AC2 made use of. That was another retro part we had a throwback of, and it was really neat to see the Karasawa featured again, specifically the Mark II version. So I think it shows the impact this weapon had in the series. This is also the weapon that made me aware of ban list. The very first time I heard of a part being banned in Armored Core was this very part, and I laugh because the few events that I did see from a distance that AC2 was in the mix for was just a really short list. It was simple. It was usually Karasawa Mark II, and tournament went on as normal. So,
It was a very real. It was a
oh
Now
boy.
that's not to say it wasn't fun as hell. Now I hadn't gotten into a competitive scene by that point yet. In fact, by this point in Armored Core, there's only a couple of us playing, but
Yeah.
we all used the MK2. We all did because it was that powerful. And if you didn't, you were seriously putting yourself in a crutch. I mean, it really was a shame. There wasn't unless you were playing something like a tank or a quad, and really opening up your arsenal. There really wasn't much that could contend with it.
You there were a few options back then. I know there were still a few old fans of the MG-1000. The Knight laser sniper rifle, yeah, though low on ammunition, was another fairly popular choice for an arm weapon if you had a decent follow-up plan behind it. But there just really wasn't anything out there for a right arm weapon that was going to compare with this guy if you had the spot to equip it. So
Which really, it was a very cool weapon, but in all honesty, that is a shame.
yeah,
And I think when a lot of people, uh, when you talk about the retro games and maybe renewing or going to the same style as previous games, we talk about Armored Core 2 sometimes, and
hmm
I think that's because really just the style and the build and just the way that the game played as a whole, I think is remembered very fondly. But at the
yeah,
same time, I think maybe a part of that, even just a small part, is because let's see if we can get this game again without the Karasawa MK2 dominating. So, that would leave, of course, going into the golden era of Armored Core, Generation 3, and I think
Yes,
that's a good time to take a break.
it is. It is. You're reading my mind here. You're right in sync. So, when we come back again, stay tuned. We're going to be talking about AC3 and beyond for the Karasawa, as well as what this weapon meant for some prominent players in our tournament community and how the weapon changed, how it went on through Last Raven, and we're going to lead that right up into Next Gen AC. Stay tuned.
Hey, we're back.
That was a JSAW style intro. I love it.
JSOS. Hey, all right.
Well,
Okay. Yeah, I'm sorry. We're back. We are back. So Karasawa.
yeah, here we are. As we said right before a break, we were going to jump right back into this talking about the AC3 generation of the Karasawa and what it meant. I think a lot of fans, probably myself included, obviously for the naming convention, would probably expect Karasawa Mark III at this point. But interestingly enough, the name jumped back, specifically to the WMG Karasawa. And I think this made an interesting reflection in the series. AC3 was a retelling in so many ways about the story of the controller and humanity being under like AI
What?
suppression.
Are you saying that From Software rehashed their story in Armored Core?
I, I hesitate to make that kind of implication. I know I'm straddling something dangerous there, but
I don't know how you can call yourself a respectful Armored Core fan saying bad things about how they told the story in this series.
why? Why? It just shows how much I gotta still work on, man. I mean,
If this, if all these Armored Core games are connected in the same universe, which they aren't, but if they were, I'm sorry, but with as much destruction as the world has seen, not only would everyone be dead,
yeah,
but we're like far into the Earth's crust at this point. There's not much. There's not even surface area left.
no.
It's so yeah, but they're not. And yeah, you're right. This whereas Armored Core 1 and 2 and their expansions were actually the same world, same story. Well, I guess maybe not the same world because actually the second one takes place on Mars, so
Hmm.
the same universe. I guess is the best way
Hmm.
to say that. Three is a restart. It's a full restart to the series. It's
Hmm.
so with that instead of calling it the MK3 or something, it is the WMD Karasawa. For some of them, you do get a completely different name for this, and another bit of a restart, starting with Nexus.
Hmm.
So we're kind of for Gen 3, we're actually talking about two different weapons.
We are. We are, and it went through a lot of changes here. And also bear in mind, it's neat to kind of track what happened with this weapon because the AC3, this was the most incarnations we had of an AC engine. So many twists here. I mean, you just count them: 3 SL, Nexus 9 Breaker, Last Raven, and if you even want to add Formula Front in there, you can throw that in if you played the portable.
Do not add Formula. Did not get a
That's an optional. That's an optional one, but
add, no, out of here.
we had so many twists on the AC3 engine here. And just looking at where we started, with AC3 and where this weapon was, it was interesting. It really felt, at least to me, that this was the first time the Karasawa had been taken into, the laser rifle realm, but balanced in a sense. It wasn't meant to be as blatant. Well, this is it. The hands down at like amazing laser rifle, but well, if I recall, the description was something like the epitome laser rifles or whatnot. But it still had its penalties about the weight and everything. In fact, it was chunky. It weighed about over 1,500, about 1,520, I believe. So that's
Where whereas the previous versions definitely felt like they were breaking the rules of the
yeah.
game in the kind of weapon they were. The Gen 3, at least actually not just, but definitely for 3 in Silent Line,
Hmm.
it was it was within the realm of the rules and
Yep.
staying in the fair weapon to have its pluses and its disadvantages at the same time.
Definitely. We also saw an interesting change in this. When I look at this version of the Karasawa, this is where I mark it as just becoming bulkier and just more prominent. I think more powerful and distinct in its design. The weapon itself bulked out a lot. Instead of being more of just a slim design with a counterweight, it had a lot of really good expansion to it. You still had the counterweight to it, but it wasn't as exaggerated and radical. It was the barrel, and the stock had just a much stronger, sturdier looking build to it, and even the round itself. Again, the one from AC2 really hurt and was terrifying, but this round, the round itself was larger. It was very distinct as well, both from its explosion and the way it shot. It had a way you could see it from across the map, and you could know that's the Karasawa firing.
Yeah, so with this version, I think is when the Karasawa really uh, gets itself in its definition to this day, which is a big, bulky laser rifle, and it's had its most incarnations as this type of weapon.
Definitely, definitely. And another, I think, neat aspect about this one too, besides the weight. The weight translated not just physically in stats, but I think in the feel of this weapon too. One thing you'll notice across the board about the Karasawa is it's always had a list of weapon lock special. And I think this impacted me really directly with this version of the Karasawa. It always felt as I was playing, there was a certain weight behind using this weapon, and it felt like it had its own linear pattern of firing. And some people say, that's hoopla. The rest of the laser rifles feel like that too. But I really think this one was a standout. It felt that it truly had its own aim, and that it had its own like trajectory, the way you focus the shot. Now, it didn't have like the two-tier explosion or the two-tier damage that we spoke about with the Mark II version. It still did have a large impact. Now, here's what was neat about it. While you didn't have a grenade round, like the sound of that like thundering across the arena when it impacted, when it hit, the thing could blind you. It was a very, very bright effect, especially if it hit you clean in the face, dead on, and it was right in the camera. Depending on the optionals that were set up too, if you weren't watching what you were doing, it could line you up for many more shots too. And it could be a distracting weapon in that regard too. I just remember it had some of the brightest flash on it just upon impact, and the round actually whizzing by you, which was neat. It had a psychological effect to it. I think the other two did as well, but it's like this third version of it did it in a different way. It was more subtle, but it was still just as mean. So
So, and we were talking about this a little bit before the show and again during the break. I mean, this version becomes very notable, whereas the MK2 was banned in the earliest of events. The This version of the Karasawa, in both its versions within Gen 3, were not considered an unfair weapon, open
right,
for use in events. And and as Error had said in the post for this over at ACL, there are some notable winners to this, and this had
yes,
actually put this conversation on. Which I'm not the biggest fan of the Karasawa, but we were talking about this, and it had to be noted that in one of the couple tournament wins that I had, was an AC that used this. And in fact, it was in the non-op I, it was ACMM1 non-op I team event, to which actually myself and my partner both used this weapon.
Oh, who was your partner that year? Was it Gimpy or?
No, it wasn't Gimpy. It was my friend Jason. I can't remember what his online handle went as, but he had been playing Armored Core
Oh,
with us since the beginning, and he had a big, huge heavyweight, and we both had. I was using a biped middleweight,
hmm.
and we did well. Well, obviously we did well. We won that event. Um, we were both using. He had the big double back missile weapons, and I just won. This was my AC for this was my main AC going up through to this point, actually, with later in Silent Line, and actually for ACMM2 I had switched my main
Hmm.
AC and another middleweight biped, but completely different fashion. This is when I started my love for dual rifles, which I know still haunts you to this day in some of those matches we talked about. But yeah, so I had a little bit of tournament love with this, and we were talking about you had reminded me of Wolf A, and
Hmm.
he's quite the marksman with the Carousel in
Hmm.
later versions. Um, so I think I can't remember if he had won any events with that, but
Yeah.
like Eric had mentioned,
Hmm.
um, Oliver from
Yeah,
over
yeah.
in the West Coast, who I didn't quite grasp that at first, but then you and I talked about it. And I do actually, I remember that myself, and I know that you do remember this quite well. So
Oh
I'll let you
yes.
explain about Oliver.
Very fondly of this, and I'm glad that we had this reminder. I'll be honest, Eric, if you didn't say it, I was going to say it because it's hard to, I think, separate discussion of this weapon without talking about how it really impacted the tournament community. As some of you might know, MOC stood for Masters of California. Now, this was the most known LAN tournament for AC at the time. And there was a player by the name of Oliver who made extensive use of this weapon, specifically dominating with it during MOCs 2, 3, and 4. Had just so many decisive wins with this thing. He took the thing multiple times, took the event. But I think a lot of these vids have been lost to time. There was a time when on the old ACO you could download a lot of these, you could grab them. I snatched all those up when they came up, and I've got an archive that I'd love to share through ACL and some other outlets in the near future.
Guys, you have to know that AC Bids is like porn for
Yeah,
Zelda.
it's history. It's living history. Kind of semi-dead history, I guess you could say, but it's still. Uh,
No, it's not dead, man. We're still
no,
around.
no,
We're still talking about it,
yeah, for
even if
sure.
you don't like it.
But it's this stuff was really important, and just further punctuating on this, how you had this weapon that it's obviously fair use. Yeah, it was heavy. Yes, it had certain effects to equipment, but the drain it took from you was fair. It was a slugger of a weapon, 1600 power per hit. Again, you could optional part this if you wanted. Just solid all around. Had the range, could contend with anything out there. And seeing Oliver go up against all the designs that he fought against with it just showed its versatility and how powerful the Karasawa could be in the right hands. Now, bear in mind the special thing about this, he used it on a bipedal design. I believe it fluctuated between mid and heavy. Feel free to if you still have his direct build posted, that'd be great. I tend to remember heavier legs on one and a mid leg on his other build. If he stuck with it. But the thing that really counted here was that this was the only weapon Oliver made use of. 50 shots. Now, I believe he may have had deeks, such as DD10 or 20, but just the 50 shots of the Karasawa, he used that to carry him through every match. Went up against, I think one of my favorite matches, he had a loss or two in this one, but went up against one of my favorite quad players at the time, Sandman, against his Spider Monkey LF71 quad that ran GNL. GNL with the sniper rifle. And again, even the matches that he'd lose would be super close. And I mean, you're talking trading shots with, the pull stick of cannons and then a really, really powerful sniper as well. Again, it held its own in about any environment. Um, Besides, going up against other quads, fellow bipeds and everything, even like the heavier designs, and tanks, just well placed, very accurate shooting. And again, blinding people at the right time, I'm sure, really worked to his advantage as well. But there were a whole slew of videos to this. Again, really convincing wins, and it just showcased how powerful the weapon could be if you really focused it, if you really made the most you could, the best use you could out of every shot. It really went the distance. So. The I think the interesting thing here when we talk about the usage drain, it wasn't too difficult to balance this back in AC3. Arguably, the CGP RAS was the hottest generator. People said there's very little reason to use anything else, and
The Rod.
which I have to agree. The RAS was an amazing generator for the weight. It's listed as a heavyweight generator, but you could laugh under the table about that one. Let's face it, about anything could equip it due to its weight. This thing wasn't packing 2,000 weight or something crazy. But you combine the standard generator for the time with this weapon, and when you focused all the resources you could towards the Karasawa, especially optional parts that boosted it, I think you'd really see it shine then. Some of the only other designs I would see it on, maybe they made use of a missile pack or a few other things. But it's interesting that the most, probably the most powerful AC that I saw to make use of this during this time was an AC that just used that weapon strictly. It was. I think there's a lot to be said for that. That it didn't have to have other weapons help vocalize it or help accent it. It was what it was. You could go and
Yeah,
waste the shots too, but hey.
it really it's powerful enough. Actually thinking about this, talking about it here tonight, I'm actually a little surprised that not that I think it should have been, but obviously there was some tournament dominance with this weapon,
Hmm.
and I don't recall anyone crying foul about the
No,
Kurosawa. It really was a fairly balanced weapon. I mean, you did pay to use it.
you did.
So now, and that gets us into like I said, for Gen 3, two incarnations of this weapon.
Yeah.
Then you go into Nexus, and then it's the WHO 4HL whatever KRSW. The KRSW, obviously the Kurosawa, and I believe the big reason for this is it gets a little bit of a nerf,
Hmm.
but now you can use two.
Indeed. We this was something we were missing for a long time. Dual wielding weapons was slow to come into AC. You had specific rifles and guns. People were so excited about that in Silent Line when it got introduced. Even a rifle this is only designated for left. People would make use of that, and slowly but surely we got more more weapons introduced to be used with both hands if we wanted. Now, it's significant to note that the Nexus incarnation of the Karasawa probably it saw its biggest nerf ever. It really got kicked in the teeth here. It got it 20 ammo got shaved off it. It's now down to 30 shots.
You were saying that, but actually the stats I'm finding for it
Were
says
they?
40, so I don't know if maybe it went back up.
It did go back up for LR, I
Okay.
believe, and some of the other later ones. It went back up when they rebalanced gameplay.
Okay.
But yeah, and then it was like 1400 damage or so, and I mean, it could still pack a kick, but a lot had opened up, and there were other options to really, I think, explore at this point. The people that I saw sticking with the weapon during this time were the true fans of it. People who just loved it. Now, it's not like it lost its accuracy, or some of its other trademark thing. It was still there, and it could still pack a kick, and it could still travel where you needed. But it really felt like more of a specialty weapon. And as I talk about that, we had a Karasawa specialist in the Midwest as well. Unfortunately, he did not get a chance to compete in AC MM2 or 3, any of our Silent Line events or anything before, but he was introduced to us on Nexus. We talked a bit about him right at the beginning of this segment. His name was Wu Fei, and he always made use of a lightweight biped that had the Karasawa almost exclusively. He made very very good use of this weapon. Again, obviously you really got to make the shots count because now that it was really limited, by Nexus, and he'd use one. He'd always use the one off. And now it's interesting too. Wu Fei didn't pull wins in like the double elimination event with it, but it is something does go to say he did take the gauntlet event. He did the first year that he came out, and he made it pretty far in ACMM4 as well. I know I went up against him that year. I had considered the Carousel. It was 9-breaker by this point, but I chose the BP bazooka instead. The BP was very strong. You could argue it was a solid K-Saw by then. And we ended up playing in the semifinals. I managed to defeat him there. But again, he was very, very, very formidable with it. And it showed that if you still wanted to have dedication to this weapon, if you still wanted to focus on it, the room for it was there. You just really had to make it stretch. And you pretty much almost had to use something auxiliary, whether you're going to hanger a weapon or use like an extra back set of missiles. This is where other weapons would complement it more. It was just a lot harder to make it carry its own weight, just due to how it was set up. And I think this is across the board, and this is what's so fascinating about the Carousel. It almost echoes each game or each generation of AC it's in. When you see a large change, it kind of follows along with it. Nexus was really like an era of toning back, of cutting back on a lot of things. We had less energy. Heat was higher. You had to be stricter about your weapon options. For goodness sake, if you weren't paying attention to your booster, your radiator, and your generator combo, you were sunk as it was. And so it was hard enough to get the mobility you needed, get the right cooling you needed, and get the right energy you needed to get places. And even when you push your output to the max, that was still hard. So I think for a lot of people, this weapon kind of fell by the wayside. In fact, a lot of people went just extreme. They said, forget equipping really heavy arm weapons like the Karasawa or a sniper rifle. Some just went all out and ran the method of backdoor cooling. They decided to go with machine guns, such as the like the M2 and something like the the other rapid weapons or a few of the snipers and just let themselves burn and just go into force cooling. And they just ended up putting most of their weight towards the BGR combo instead of weapons itself. And it was really a reflection of the time. And I think what was happening with weaponry and the case law kind of followed with it. This is probably the age, I think, of the sparsest use I saw with it. I just tooled around with it a bit. I know I didn't make use of it during this time, and I can't talk. I was no Karasawa specialist. The only time I ever really
I
heavily
as well.
used it was two. So yeah,
And so it does get a bit of a nerf going into Nexus. And yeah, I do see that. It got a slight buff, or I guess not even so much a buff, but a redisbursement of stats
yeah,
with Last Raven. Uh, but yeah, so here I think overall you do have the Karasawa in its weakest form.
yeah,
Not that it was bad.
right. By any means, but still, it's a hallmark. And again, once again, the weapon follows the conventions of the series. As things started to improve for AC mechanics, nine breaker drop. We got a little bit more energy. Heat wasn't as intensive. By the time Last Raven hit, those borders expanded even more, and it's like the Karasaw just evolved along right with that. It went back up, as we know. You got 40 shots, so we gained some ammo on it. Apparently, gained a little bit of extra damage as well. And you know, Last Raven was one that I didn't get to see a whole lot of tournament history for this weapon, and it being used competitively. The last event, besides Kai play, which is weird, I would have thought I would have seen this on Kai. A lot, Booyaka, Decapin, OBG, so many groups and people were active during this time, and I still didn't see heavy usage of it. Those of you who remember coming in Kai rooms, Rebel Soul PK, Karara Kenshin would set up matches and we'd run all night, with that stuff. But we just tended to have other things featured and other types of builds come out. I'm sure some of you made heavy use of it. But my last time I think I had to see this in person at a LAN tournament was 2007 during ACMA2. It was again one of our Midwest regional events, our last one that we actually had. And our main event was double elimination, and again, no one brought it that day. No one really made use of it. We had a couple of bazooka users. I know Cleric was running the Zook biped that day, and a few others. But
I want my bazookas back, by the way.
I know, right? Oh goodness. They really had it up, and I was talking about this a little bit earlier for Ninebreaker, about the BP bazooka compared with the Karasawa. There were so many comparisons made during that time, saying there it is, there's a solid version of the K-Saw, because it pretty much was. The thing had great velocity, great power. It was very similar, and it showed a lot of the traits the K-Saw had. Really heavy though,
So
bulkier. K-Saw, I love it. But still, the weapon, the Kurosawa itself, has always had its own niche, and it kept its accuracy for the most part, and kept most of its firing the way it was until we pathed on out with Last Raven, and then we hit next gen.
we will not be spending a lot of time with
No,
this. The failures of Armored Core 1 well documented by me, but this one is
uh,
just the fact that it has. I mean, it's technically in 4, but it is absent as far as a real usable weapon. It just more of an emphasis on the suck that was
yeah.
introduction to Armored Core.
It's so hard for me to fathom an AC, especially introducing a brand new numbered AC when you have a world change without this iconic weapon. And naturally, you're swimming through, looking through the parts, and it's gonna pop up. I'm gonna find it. It's gonna be as awesome as it always is. What's it gonna be this gen? Yeah, K-Saw Mark 3, 4, whatever. And you get the Canopus. So about that, the closest thing that we had in the official parts was it was a laser rifle called the Canopus, and it followed the same aesthetic. It had a double counterweight design to it, not as bulky as the one in 3, not as slim as the one that we saw in Armored Core 1 and Armored Core 2, but it still had enough of emphasis, to make it that laser. And it was so frustrating to call it that name because you knew what it was. I know what this weapon is, and all the stats symbolize it and exemplify it, but it's not. And those of you who were, really active on Classic 4, if you made use of it, let us know. But this was one that I just did not see that was hot at all. I know, if I recall, I think, was it even Motocobra got way more use than the Canopus. So this was one that was just I think a tragedy on a lot of levels, and I really hated to see the weapon come on lose its namesake here for a while. It's just painful, straight
And
out.
like we've alluded to, the Karasawa was in there. If you pre-ordered Armored Core 4, you would get the Karasawa, which was you call it Canopus, I'll call it Canopus. I'll continue to
Mm.
murder names. It doesn't deserve any better. So, it's still in the game, and they are basically the same weapon. The only difference is the name. Um, it's just stupid. You're stupid from software. I mean, look, I don't know what you were thinking with Armored Core 4 in so many ways, but here's another one where I scratch my head and say, what are you doing? Are you serious? Are you guys just like smoking way too much weed at this point?
Oh boy. It's just sad to say in so many levels, and the whole the pre-order exclusive. I had no idea about any of that stuff. I hadn't even checked that out. I'm sure there's some ghost code floating around somewhere in 4 regarding that, but this was really an area. It was just kind of sitting by the shore, kind of rusted and beaten. So, man, oh man.
I don't think we need to cover anything more on this. I mean, from my understanding, the stats are good. It is a fairly solid weapon, but fuck it, it's not the Karasawa. Not, I guess technically, but who played 4 pre-ordered it and is still in the community at this point. So.
Yeah. And then, again, we had the same story going into to 4A, and the Karasawa really wouldn't see a return to its namesake and heritage till we hit 5. Here we are, we hit AC5, and we get it for the first time ever, 2 distinct versions of the Karasawa, and it looks the same. That's something important to make. It has again, it sort of picks up a bit of its bulkier frame again, but very different. And obviously, this brings us back to where we are currently. You have your extremely powerful assassination weapon, as some people have named it, with just just 4 shots. You can amp that, and you can use energy amps, whatever else you want to behind it, or you can go with the version that gives you more ammunition and less
Well,
power. Whatnot.
12.
So
Okay. So yeah, we're in current gen now. So, do we bunch this together? Do we with 5 and Verdict Day, or do we talk about it individually? Because I think it's probably just best to bunch it together.
yeah, I mean they're similar enough, I think, to do so. I mean, we've had minor changes as is, but I mean, but bear in mind we did get our 40 shot version still with AC5.
Oh wait, you know what? Oh man, I can't believe we forgot this. That's right, and I'm gonna blame you for doing this intentionally. We forgot to talk about
Mini
the
saw?
mini
I did it
saw.
intentionally.
Yeah, we talked about this before the show, and he's like, I don't think we should classify that. And I'm like, that's a Karasawa's little brother. Made by a rival company, whereas the Karasawa in 3rd gen is made by Mirage. Crest comes out with their version, which is a lighter Karasawa Light, a mini Sawa,
Mhm.
as it was called. And I think that's notable. So you don't think so, and I think it is.
Well, not that isn't notable. My exact line was I did not consider them Karasawas as in the direct line, but so many of the conventions are close about them. They're rapid fire, they're light. You have a slightly different flash pattern on them and whatnot. But it's interesting. They almost felt kind of like the competitor class, and they were fun. They were fun. People always used to run around and say mini saw.
Well, and I think that's important because we see the reintroduction of the mini saw, and I think people call it the lolly saw
Yeah.
with the VD, but it's
Yeah.
basically the same thing. So, okay, so a little bit of backstory there. It's not the
Hmm.
first time it's been in the game.
Yeah.
So we get into 5, and we do get 2 versions of the Karasawa, which honestly at that point don't make a heck of a lot of sense to me.
Hmm.
So you get to 4. I mean, as far as the stats go and how it's used, okay, I get it. I get why they built it the way they did, but I think they probably could have gone about it a better way. So I'm not a big fan of the Karasawa in 5, but then we get into Verdict Day, and they give us a 3rd version. And I have an AC that uses this now.
Hmm.
Grabbing the Karasawa for the first time in probably about 7-8 years and using it again, in more than just a testing capacity. It's like, okay, now you actually really like this. But so this gen, first time we get not 1, not 2, 3 versions.
Yeah.
like you said, we have the most powerful of the three
Hmm.
that has 4 shots. Then you have damage taken down a bit, but then some more ammo, 12 shot,
Hmm.
and then the new one with Verdict Day, considerably less damage.
Mm.
Still pretty good velocity and impact, but that is reduced as well, I believe, on both. Also depending on how you tune it.
Hmm.
But a 40 shot version,
Mm.
a little bit lighter, definitely a lot less damage, but
Yep.
40 shots. And so, I haven't played with that one a heck of a lot, but
Mm.
3 versions now, so kind of take your pick depending on how you build your AC.
Yeah, and this is neat. It's almost like they're giving us different shades or like different flavors. It really took me off guard the first time I saw a four-shot version of it. I never imagined the Karasawa as a almost like a portable laser cannon. The way I always felt I could go to a different gun for that, or I'd go to some of the old school like large plasma beams for that. But no, it's a different way of representing the weapon. Now, I wouldn't call it a rebranding. It still has its standard look, its standard aesthetic, and obviously there's a version of it that follows the standard convention that we see of that quintessential balanced laser rifle we look for. But now there's different versions of different flavors of it to use, and I kind of wonder if this hints at a larger trend of some what From wants to do, not just with KSAW, but with other weapons, as
Yeah, I
they,
think that'd be a safe assessment. I think a
yeah,
lot of the weapons in 5 and BD are okay. This one, even though you can tune, but tuning still, I don't think quite goes as far as it should, as far as changing how a weapon works. Obviously, it does change it, but not to the extent that I think it should. But
right.
so you have ones that are lighter, so a lot less ammo, but maybe they do decent damage, or you have one that has a lot of ammo but less damage. You see these different kind of versions, and again, it's reflected here with the carousel.
And it's neat too, bear in mind we have something added to it that we've never had with the AC series, and that's to Mega Buster style it to charge the weapon. And before we've always depended on lining your shot, getting good angle, trajectory, watching, the pace of your match and landing a shot. Now with the charge mechanic behind things, that changes it. And I think that adds a huge element of strategy, especially with the four-shot version. Um, timing when to do this was obviously more in 5 than I could say in Verdict Day, but timing when to do your scan cancels because you didn't want to just lose a shot because you went beyond your 8+ second charge limit. Time when to do your scans, when to pop out and use your shots, when to be optimally charged, when not to get caught on a rush down while in a really bad condition or trying to wind up another shot. They did require more positioning and I think more finesse to make use of. And that's still the case a bit now, even though you can hold your charge, you're not as paranoid about losing your shot. There definitely is still some more tactical play to do with these instead of simply, lining the shot and going. So,
Yeah, so where you have in Armored Core 1, the Kurosawa starts as almost a brainless weapon. In fact, it gets almost to the point where you're kind of looked at as like, oh man, you can't win unless you use that cheap weapon. Where which was, come on, that was the truth. You even heard it yourself.
yep,
Um, so,
yep,
but then as time goes on, it does evolve to the point where we have now a very tactical thinking man's weapon with it in 5 in VD, where you have 4 shots. You can't fuck that up. You have got to be careful.
no, and potential huge payoff or potential huge whiff if you just want to goof around and just waste, beautiful shots like that. I know, I see Oblivion Doll posting in the game FAQs boards a lot with this, and there's been discussions there. Some people are still kind of confused on, exactly what to take with it. One question that I see pop up a lot is, what shoulder weapons do I mount with these? If I want to make the full use of dual versions of these, and I think a lot can be said. I think the first choice a lot of people look at is using energy amps for obvious reasons, even though that's really going to pull harder on
Hmm.
on your energy cap. But there's still other things that can play with it too. I used to really enjoy doing dual demon pour with these. In a way, uh, you could use partially some of your shoulder weapons to help corral and control the flow of your opponent or where you want them to kind of fade and fall, and it does help line your shot better, which is interesting. I think especially the idea of fracturing your opponent's attention on different bursts of fire or being in a hard position where you pick, like, okay, go with this volley. Am I capable of? Do I think I can get away from both? Am I near enough a piece of cover? Will I have to pick the greater evil or the lesser evil in them? It's interesting, but still that plays in the idea of using strategy and thinking on your side, but I think you're going to force your opponent into some interesting decisions there too. So it's really an evolution here. Like I think brainy is a good term for it. This has become a really organic weapon with the AC series, and it's just really feel like it's grown up with AC. Like it hasn't been left behind. What AC becomes, it becomes, and it really reflects the era, and that's pretty slick. You almost never know what you're going to see out of this guy until you see the latest AC that's out. So
All the more reason to point out the fact that Armored Core 4's version doesn't really exist. Almost like a foretelling of the need to erase it from existence.
oh, I
I'm,
mean,
I'm sorry, AC4 fans. No, I'm not really sorry. If I offended, I do apologize for that. But come on, I mean, if you've been listening to the show at this point, you know
yep.
I'm gonna take shots at it. So no, but and actually, I didn't see getting back kind of on more serious on
Yeah,
on the
yeah, yeah.
topic. I actually didn't notice that correlation until now. That's a very interesting way to look at that.
Hmm.
And I think you're absolutely right on that. That's you do kind of see how the game is how that weapon is, and I don't
Yep.
even know if they intend to do that or not, or if that's just kind of how it ends up being.
I don't either. And it kind of makes me wonder that's actually the question I would love to ask someone from if I ever got the chance to do that, or if anybody else does, please take that question and ask them. I'm really curious. But who knows? This and the Moonlight, I think, are weapons that we're going to constantly see, as well as some others, as AC goes on. And
I I want the finger back.
WA finger. That is. I know that's going to be another cast story we're going to have to talk about. That's going to be a blast too. That's going to be for another show.
It's such a huge tease that they put it on that giant MT.
It is.
Oh my god, double fingers going, and
It
I'm like,
is.
I mean, that's terrifying. I remember the first time I saw that, terrifying.
Well,
Uh,
you know
the
the
finger, for those of you who don't know, was I think it actually does get the title of the most holy shit overpowered. I really think it deserves it. That thing was ridiculous. It was a rainbow of on your face in Project Phantasma. That was, oh my god. I remember the first time I got hit with that, I'm like, that's it. That's just banned. That's
the
just we don't use it. This is just between friends. I'm like, we are
yeah.
not using this weapon. This is
Yeah, totally. Just to detract from things a bit here, the amazing thing about the finger was it was almost like the best way I could describe it, it was like getting hit by a firestorm because those rounds did not feel like bullets. They each felt like explosives, each. And it was just a blinding fury, just a symphony of bullets that would just nail you. And it was, your AP, it wasn't like a slow shred. It wasn't something that would just shed. It would just burn. It would literally just get set on fire from this thing. And, boy, oh
yeah.
boy,
We'll have to really talk about that
we
sometime.
will.
That we'll have to find videos of that. I'm sure it exists on the interwebs. Because I mean, explaining that you cannot do justice to it,
You can't.
and then to top that off, the nerf it gets.
Yeah.
Because then it gets nerfed almost to the parallel of how OP it was, is then how bad it was.
Yeah, the mafia came by and kneecapped that one.
Oh my god, dude! They didn't just kneecap that; they took his freaking elbows too. Jesus, but it was ridiculous.
Heavily crippled.
Um,
But good stuff. Good stuff for another show. For another show.
so yeah, okay, so let's do the hypotheticals here a little bit.
Yeah.
For Core 6, where do you think the Karasawa goes from there? I mean, we have really no information, and guys,
Right.
this is coming right out of our asses here. So
Yeah. This is we have stepped into the realm of conjecture. So be forewarned. Again, AC6, zero data about this out there. Announcements, anything from any signs or hints of it. If there's one thing we can clearly see with this is that there should always be a version of this that carries the standard bearer of the powerful balanced laser rifle that gives you your blend of speed, of power, of weight, and of accuracy and of ammo count. Of just a nice, solid weapon that if you're willing to pay that weight for it, it can pack a kick and it can get the job done for you. Might need some support behind it depending on how the incarnation is, but that has been across the board with the Karasawa, and I have a hard time believing that they just axe that element of it out. I think a lot of this too will depend on what they do. We spoke about this earlier too with the team suite, if that stays or not, or if we have some other heavy version or some version altering feature for the gameplay that comes in. There's a lot of factors that could happen there. I think if we go back to a more traditional formula of AC, we could just see one incarnation, one version of it that would have those stats. I have a hard time believing they throw it back to AC1 and AC2 madness again, but uh,
Yeah.
I think we're going to carry that forward. This solid basis. It has its own foundation now. That's what's so cool about the weapon. Laser cannons change, GNL changes and can completely get axed in some cases, like now. They don't even exist. Weapons change and shift and mold. This guy has stayed rock steady while evolving too, which is what's so interesting. So I think we're going to see that, but it's also going to follow whatever trend tends to drop in this game. So
And I think from that, I believe, and I've said overall that I think that From is going to try to take things back to its roots, if for any other reason, uh, due to sales. They're going to want to take Armored Core back to when it was the most popular. What worked and what
yeah,
worked by sales is what I think we'll see. And if that stays true, if I'm right on that, then obviously I'm guessing that we're going to see some kind of. Well, I think we're going to see a balanced version. I think we will see a version of the MK2 again, and I think very much aesthetically. It will return looking very much like it,
yep.
feeling very much like it, but in a balanced version. So kind of a mix of your Gen 2 and Gen 3.
And I'm telling you that counterweight stock has just steadily shortened and shortened and shortened a bit. We still have the look of it and the scope and everything, but it would be really nice if there's something I want to see with the design personally. It'd be really nice to see them just go wild with that huge counterweight again. So, would love to see it.
It's funny because looking at Armored Core Wiki for a lot of this information, they didn't even bother putting up a picture of the Karasawa
No,
AC4.
no, they didn't. They didn't. It, it's funny. I almost want to say it doesn't really deserve it considering how it was treated. But
Well,
yeah.
I want to see what it looked like though, because I mean, the AC4, and this is why a lot of people don't like it, the aesthetics of AC4. Actually, I don't mind that so much. It's not quite
Mm,
my style, but because of I want to say the extreme style of that game, I
yeah.
was curious as to what it looked like.
Yeah. So yeah, I'll get you a shot or something of it if you want to see it. But
Not
the most distinct thing about that one that I thought was interesting was kind of like the double counterweight to it. It felt triangular near the back end and the handle. Then the typical sight and then counterweight design that we usually see on it. Also, the good news about this is I did manage to find my old Ethernet hub. The good old big modem box used to have on it PS2.
mm,
I managed to dig that guy out, and I was actually, I was just going back and checking out, MOA, Project Phantasma, a few of those oldies today. Checking out the shop versions, of all this stuff and how it fit in. And it's just been a real, I think, nostalgic road to kind of check it out and look at that and look at what we have now and how this weapon's grown. So I'm really happy it's still with us. I'm happy we've maintained our iconic weapons, and I think it's going to be really cool to see how they change. So if
definitely.
they do.
That's always one of the fun parts about Armored Core. I mean, you're getting into a new gen of it, and you get to see a twist on a lot of these things. And I know that there's a couple vocal people in the community that really don't have a lot of interest in this. In fact, will go as far as to say that the past of Armored Core really has no effect on what they're doing right now.
Hmm.
Five is a very dramatic shift from how a lot of the game was, but at the same time, it is a throwback to a lot of how the game was.
It is.
And I'm not even going to sit here trying to debate this issue.
Yeah.
It would be impossible for me to go into all the factors of how the past of Armored Core does affect the present of it.
Hmm.
But yeah, I mean, there's a reason why we talk about a lot of the stuff we go across the board with it.
Yeah.
So, and this is a perfect example. Just to seeing the history of it. Why is the carousel the way it is? Why does it have its name? Why
Yep.
the hell are there three versions? There are reasons for this, and they don't just have to do so much with what there is now, as
Right.
much as they're trying to at least honor or duplicate from back then.
Yeah. For sure, and I think this just further reinforces it. I think it's really easy to separate the past of Armored Core with the current and say, the two don't have anything to do with each other. And but From always remembers the decisions they've made about the series in each game. You always see shades and little shadows and reflections of those things, and you see it down to the stats and down to the parts. And that's why a lot of this is relevant and why it's important. If you understand these trends where a lot of these weapons are tried before, you can have a much better bearing on not only where they are now, but where they're going to be heading. And I think possible shifts and changes for them and whatnot. So they all marry. It's all a big junction.
Yeah. But I think it does it
I think
for this
so.
topic. I think
I think
we
so.
actually spent over an hour talking about the Karasawa.
Oh yeah.
We really did that. That's awesome.
Well deserved. Well deserved hour to this weapon. So because
All right, great. So, I'm not. We're not totally sure what we're doing next week as
yeah.
far as the topic, but it has been talked about a couple times here. In the near future, in the next few weeks, we will be doing a five-part retro series.
Hmm.
We'll be covering the Gen 3, the golden era of Armored Core. Each episode will be talking about one of the five games. Yes, I do not count. What is it? Formula Front. That does not, guys. At least not here in the U.S. We did not get a PS2
Yep.
version of that.
This is true.
So we don't count that, and it's not actually any part of the storylines that are in there too. It does stand as its own entity. It actually plays really weird. So,
Mm.
but we'll be talking about 3, Silent Line, Nexus, Ninebreaker, and Last Raven. We will be doing that during the holidays. Those will be pre-recorded shows as we take a break from doing a show every week
Yeah.
for what it'll be almost 5 months now, getting around there,
Yep.
4 or 5 months. So we'll be taking a little bit of break, and when we come back from that, the show will be retooled a bit. It's going to allow us to do some much needed changes to things, some upgrading and such, and give us an opportunity to really look at where we take the show in the future. But again, that is a few weeks away. So, but that is coming. As for the next few weeks, we'll see.
Hmm.
Sometimes we have topics planned out weeks ahead of time. Sometimes we look at them at the next staff meeting to make a decision.
Hmm. But regardless, you will know. So stay tuned. But for this week, that is going to wrap it up. Remember, you can drop us a line at ravensvoiceacl@gmail.com for any emails or questions or your favorite cookie recipe. I don't know what you got to send. But I'll also be sure to place the relevant links that you'll need for this discussion thread this week if you want to chip in over at ACL for that or any other discussions. And until then, we'll catch you next week, same time, same place. Have a great evening, day, whatever it is for you, and take it easy. Enjoy AC.
See you later.